We welcome Brett's presentation.
Good morning. I'm Professor Brett Sutton, Victoria's Chief Health Officer. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians and First Nations people of all of the lands that we're meeting from today, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Of course, I'd also like to acknowledge the International Epidemiological Association, the Australasian Epidemiological Association, and of course the conference organisers, MCI Group, who've done such a fantastic job of bringing us all together today. And last but not least, of course, the speakers and delegates who'll be with us, sharing all of their knowledge and making those really important connections. I'd like to welcome everyone here. Of course, the Victorian Government is honoured to be a major sponsor for this Congress. Of course, it was to be physically here in Melbourne, but with all of the disruptions of the global pandemic of COVID-19, that's not been able to happen in person. But of course, the fantastic connections, the coming together of knowledge, understanding, the sharing of lessons, and the shared experience of learning are all really important things that are still going to happen despite the fact that we can't come together face to face. So a huge thank you to everyone who's worked so hard to make this possible today. Of course, epidemiology is really at the heart of my profession, public health, and at the heart of so much that we need to do to support health and well-being in the world. It crosses communicable disease and non-communicable disease really in equally important measures. But there's no question that the last year and a half, almost 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic has really put public health, epidemiology in particular, into the spotlight. Who would have thought 2 years ago that effective reproduction number and attack rates would be such a part of the normal parlance of the general community. But it has. We've got an interest in it. We've got a deeper understanding of it and a real appreciation for how very significant a role it plays in helping to inform us to make the wisest possible decisions we can in our lives. There is no perfect science, but by God, it has contributed such a significant amount to the public health response with respect to COVID-19 and for so many other public health issues over many years, indeed decades, over a century. But it's being appreciated really for its true value right now, and may it always be so. COVID has been the spotlight. And it's absolutely worthy of all of the investments that have been made in epidemiology to try and help us focus and prioritise and plan and strengthen our prevention and response components. It is both an urgent requirement in 2021, but a critically important one for now and into the future. Of course, there are formal and informal elements to epidemiology. The rumour files, if you like, and the horizon scanning are a really critical part, and it was within our own communicable disease epidemiology and surveillance team that those very early January ProMed mail emails went out, and that the early indications of severe human-to-human transmission or potential human-to-human transmission, a cluster of human cases of viral pneumonia, or so it seemed, in Wuhan in 2020 came to my attention and were the beginnings of our planning, preparedness and indeed response to COVID-19. So a really important early indication, and it's just grown from strength to strength in Victoria. It has informed all along these last 20 months, our response, the strategizing that we're doing, the strengthening of our ongoing planning, preparedness and prioritization for COVID-19. It is entirely appropriate that innovation is a central theme for Congress this year. It's been a significant part of Victoria's focus and investment in recent years. We've put a lot of effort into genomics, for example, viral and bacterial, but it really started with bacterial genomic sequencing, and the sequencing capability has really only been built with 6 years of funding and investment, but that's formed a really critical foundation for COVID-19. But in addition, a really significant role in our investigations of foodborne illness, understanding of clusters, understanding of the linkages between food samples, human samples and environmental samples. And maybe most importantly in antimicrobial resistance, again, understanding the linkages between environmental surveillance and human surveillance, and then crossing over into animal and food production surveillance as well. That's really tailored our response to antimicrobial resistance and deepened our understanding, but also made our response capability much more agile and much more focused. For COVID, again, we've gone to wastewater surveillance. That's played a really important role in early detection and, again, focused response. A similar story in antimicrobial resistance, being able to look at the fuller picture of antimicrobial resistant organisms and to work with population catchments in order to understand the prevalence and the changing trends and dynamics of AMR in Victoria. We've also done significant work in data linkage, which has really supported cluster detection for a number of diseases. And that data linkage has been really important to both bring in non-traditional data sets that relate to broader demographics, broader interactions with not just the health sector, but other parts of government, and what that can tell us about the health data that we're looking at and trying to respond to. Thunderstorm asthma was a really critical event that we experienced in Victoria, the most significant epidemic thunderstorm asthma event that the world had seen to that point in time, and that has helped spur on the development of syndromic surveillance, so the surveillance of syndromes presenting to primary care, presenting to emergency departments. We've looked in particular at syndromes of presentation in EDs, both as an early warning detection for thunderstorm asthma, but potentially adverse events for vaccination and indeed other rare but relatively unique presentations. So another important innovation born out of crisis, really. We've also had digital test tracker or test and trace elements where, again, we're bringing in new data sets that capture demographic information for those who are testing for COVID-19. Again, that helps deepen our understanding of the populations most affected, the inequities that seem to underlie some of the transmission dynamics, and inform and prioritise our response in that regard. We are hosting a panel on Monday afternoon, so please look out for this, where we'll discuss innovations within the Victorian Government. In conclusion, data and evidence play a really important role for all of us here in Victoria, in Australia, globally. Evidence for action. This is spoken of so often in epidemiology, but it really is at the foundation. That is action for policy making, action for programmatic focus, action for service delivery, and action for the prioritisation, the agility and adaptiveness that's required in really urgent and important public health responses. It is absolutely fantastic that we can come together to both share our challenges, especially over the last 20 months, I imagine, but also some of our really significant achievements and the lessons that we will have unique to our own context, but many aspects that will have a shared understanding and a really rich opportunity to share across nations and across disciplines. The advance of public health in Australia, in Victoria, and globally, informed by these innovations in epidemiology, are really critical. Public health is a passion of mine, of course, as a public health physician. Clearly, epidemiology informs so much more beyond public health, but as a really core element that sustains, supports, and manages the risks to health and well-being for human beings across the planet, what a critical element epidemiology plays for health in particular. So I'd love to take this opportunity to really acknowledge all of the epidemiologists and all of those who work in whatever way in that great world of data and epidemiology for all of the work that you do each and every day, in particular the really tireless work of the last year and a half, 2 years with its COVID focus, but to use that as a springboard, I hope, for so much more investment in the great story of human well-being and all of its challenges. So a huge thank you to all of you. I really do hope this Congress is a fantastic opportunity for all of you to connect again, to share everything that you've been through, everything that you've learned, and to bring those lessons and to challenge each other with all of our individual and collective perspectives. Most of all, I hope it advances public health and all of those other disciplines. And last but not least, I really do hope that you enjoy this Congress and all of the opportunities that you'll have to share your stories and to hear so many others. Thanks again.